Daniel Upton just fired 6 bullets into the head of his best friend. He sits in police custody, calmly explaining he isn't a murderer. By pulling the trigger inside the walls of Arkham Sanitarium, he insists he was performing an act of salvation. His victim was Edward Pickman Derby, a sensitive, highly educated poet who had been reduced to a hollowed-out, rambling shell of a man, locked away in a psychiatric ward, awaiting a cure that would never come. But Upton and Derby are only the endpoints of this tragedy. The actual architect of the bloodshed is a young woman named Asenath Waite, Edward's wife. To understand why a man felt compelled to execute his closest companion, we have to look closely at Asenath. We have to peel back the layers of her stolen identity to see how a woman feared for her dark, commanding presence was, in reality, the absolute victim of a terrifying patriarchal scheme. Her story begins in the decaying, half-deserted fishing port of Innsmouth. It is an isolated town, suffocating under the weight of old, horrific bargains made with things from the deep sea. The locals carry the physical markers of these ancient pacts. Asenath inherited this so-called Innsmouth look, specifically the unsettling, protuberant eyes, passed down from an unknown mother who spent her life hidden entirely behind a veil. But the true danger in Asenath's home was her father, Ephraim Waite. Ephraim was a powerful occultist, a man whose obsession with dark magic was driven entirely by a desperate, sadistic refusal to die. Growing up under his control, Asenath was kept in complete isolation. Neighbors whispered about the Waite mansion, avoiding it at night because of the strange sounds and muffled screams echoing from the padlocked, boarded-up attic. Ephraim never raised Asenath to have agency, or a future, or even a life of her own. He bred her in a toxic, captive environment for a single, chilling purpose: to serve as a biological vessel for his own survival. Years later, a young woman calling herself Asenath Waite arrives at Miskatonic University. She immediately establishes herself as a brilliant, intimidating scholar of medieval metaphysics. It is here she meets Edward Derby, a perennial child, coddled, deeply insecure, and intensely fascinated by the library's collection of forbidden occult lore. When they cross paths in the student rooms, she zeroes in on him. Edward's weak will makes him the perfect target. She quickly dominates their relationship. Classmates called her a powerful hypnotist, staring with a predatory gaze, making shocking, brazen remarks, defying the era's rigid gender norms. Set against the early women's suffrage movement, this assertiveness created deep anxiety among the male narrators, who viewed her independence as monstrous. But this terrifying display of feminist agency was entirely artificial. The strong, commanding woman frightening the men of Arkham was a meticulously crafted costume. The real Asenath Waite died screaming in that padded attic years before enrolling at the university. The entity roaming the campus, seducing Edward Derby, is actually her father, Ephraim Waite, wearing his daughter's body. Using the exchanged personality ritual, Ephraim overrode Asenath's soul before his body failed. But enraged by his female shell, he believed only a male brain possessed true cosmic power. He used their marriage to groom Edward, whittling down his defenses for the final transfer. This is the quiet, overlooked tragedy of the narrative. Asenath's agency, her womanhood, and her very soul were violently erased. She was hollowed out, a mere stepping stone for a patriarch's endless ambition. The marriage finally fractures when Edward realizes he is losing chunks of time. He wakes up exhausted, eventually discovering his body is hijacked in the dead of night, piloted down into subterranean pits to participate in blasphemous cult ceremonies. Driven entirely mad by the violation, Edward stages a desperate rebellion. He catches the entity off guard, picks up a heavy silver candlestick, and smashes in his wife's skull to kill the parasite hiding inside. He drags the corpse down into the cellar, buries it beneath a pile of boxes, and attempts to resume his life, convinced he has broken the Waite family's hold. But physical death means nothing to a master of soul transference. From beyond the grave, Ephraim triggers a final post-mortem trap. He permanently seizes Edward's healthy body, forcibly marooning Edward's consciousness inside Asenath's buried, rotting corpse. The bitter irony is complete. Down in the darkness of the cellar, Edward is now experiencing the exact metaphysical entrapment, the total bodily violation that the real Asenath suffered her entire life. Edward manages to claw his way out of the dirt. He drags that decaying, liquescent form through the streets, arriving as a dwarfed, fetid mass on Daniel Upton's doorstep to deliver one final, desperate warning before the body completely dissolves. Faced with the horrific truth of the pile of bones on his porch, Upton understands what he has to do. He marches into the Arkham sanitarium to confront the man wearing his best friend's face. Which brings us back to those 6 gunshots in the asylum ward. Upton fires, claiming he has liberated his friend, and immediately cremates the remains to permanently destroy the parasite known as Ephraim Waite. A male protagonist stops the monster. He successfully avenges his male friend. But the true victim of the story, Asenath Waite, a woman whose entire existence, body, and identity were consumed by the men around her, is left completely unmourned, swept up and reduced to ash.